The wind howled like a wounded animal outside Rachel's kitchen window. She steadied herself on her crutches, watching the snow come down so thick she could barely see her own barn anymore. The weather report hadn't been kidding. This was the worst blizzard Montana had seen in 20 years, maybe longer. Rachel sighed and adjusted her grip on the crutches. Her left ankle throbbed despite the pain medication. 3 months since the accident, and she still wasn't used to this helpless feeling. Getting from the kitchen to the living room felt like climbing a mountain. The simple act of making coffee in the morning left her exhausted. She was 34 years old, living alone in a house that had been in her family for 3 generations. The divorce papers had been finalized 2 months ago. Her ex-husband David hadn't even bothered to come to the final hearing. His lawyer said everything that needed saying. David wanted out. He didn't want to be married to someone who couldn't walk properly, who needed help with basic tasks, who had become, in his words, too much work. The memory still stung. Rachel pushed it away and focused on the storm instead. The horses were safe in the barn. She'd managed to get them fed before the worst of it hit, though the effort had nearly made her fall twice. Everything else could wait until morning, or until the snow stopped, whichever came first. She was turning away from the window when she saw them, headlights barely visible through the white curtain of snow. They were moving slowly, crawling along her long driveway. Then they stopped. Just stopped about halfway to the house. Rachel frowned. Nobody came out here in weather like this. She lived 5 miles from the nearest town, and most folks knew better than to venture out during a blizzard. She watched the lights for a few minutes. They didn't move. Whoever it was, they were stuck. She was debating whether she could even make it to her truck to help when the headlights went dark. Her heart sank. That wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. In weather this cold, a broken-down vehicle was more than an inconvenience. It was dangerous. Rachel grabbed her heavy coat from the hook by the door, struggling to put it on while balancing on her crutches. She was just reaching for her phone to call for help when she heard it. A knock, hard and urgent. Someone was at her front door. She made her way across the living room as quickly as she could, her crutches thumping against the hardwood floor. Another knock came, even more desperate than the first. When she finally pulled the door open, a gust of freezing wind nearly knocked her backward. A man stood on her porch, covered in snow from head to toe. But that wasn't what made her gasp. In his arms, pressed tight against his chest, were 2 tiny bundles. Babies. He was holding 2 babies. Please, the man said through chattering teeth. His face was red from the cold, ice crystals forming in his dark beard. Please, my truck died. The babies, they're so cold. Please, I just need to get them warm. Rachel didn't think. She stepped back, pulling the door wide. Get in here now! The man stumbled inside, snow falling from his coat onto her floor. He was a big guy, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy ranch coat and cowboy boots. But right now he looked small and scared, his entire focus on the 2 infants in his arms. The couch, Rachel said, pointing with one crutch. Sit down. I'll get blankets. She moved as fast as she could to the hallway closet, grabbing every blanket she could reach. Behind her, she heard the man speaking softly to the babies, his voice gentle despite his obvious panic. When she returned to the living room, he'd unwrapped the bundles slightly. 2 tiny faces peeked out, both red and crying weakly. They couldn't have been more than a few months old. Twins by the look of them. One had a little blue hat, the other pink. How long were you out there? Rachel asked, spreading blankets on the couch. 20 minutes, maybe 30, the man said. His hands were shaking as he tried to check the babies. The heater in the truck stopped working about 5 miles back. I thought I could make it to town, but then the engine just quit. I saw your lights and walked here. I didn't know what else to do. Rachel sat down beside him, forgetting about her ankle for a moment. She reached for the baby in pink, the little girl. Let me help. We need to warm them up slowly. The man looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes were dark brown, filled with fear and gratitude. Thank you. God, thank you so much. I thought I was going to lose them out there. Together, they worked to warm the babies. Rachel grabbed some towels from the bathroom to dry them off. The man held them close, using his own body heat. Slowly, gradually, the infants stopped their weak crying and began to look around with curious eyes. I'm Tom, the man said after a while. Tom Rivera. These are my kids, Luke and Lily. They're 6 months old. Rachel Bennett, she replied, adjusting the blanket around little Lily. This is my family's ranch. Well, mine now. Tom nodded, still focused on his children. I can't thank you enough. I really thought. When that truck died. He didn't finish the sentence. Rachel understood. She'd lived in Montana her whole life. She knew what the cold could do. People died in weather like this, especially people caught unprepared with babies who couldn't regulate their own body temperature. Where were you headed? She asked Billings. My sister lives there. We were supposed to arrive this afternoon, but we got a late start, and then the storm came in faster than predicted. Tom's voice was rough with exhaustion. I'm a ranch hand. Was a ranch hand. Lost my job 3 weeks ago when the owner sold his property. My sister said I could stay with her until I found something new. Rachel noticed he said I, not we. Before she could stop herself, she asked, What about their mother? Tom's face changed. Something painful flickered across it. She died. When they were born. Complications during delivery. It's just been the 3 of us since then. I'm sorry, Rachel said quietly, and she meant it. Whatever pain her divorce had caused her, at least David was still alive somewhere. This man had lost his wife and was raising 2 babies completely alone. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the howling wind outside and the soft breathing of the twins. Luke had fallen asleep in his father's arms. Lily was fighting it, her little eyes drooping and then popping open again as if she was afraid to let her guard down. You should stay, Rachel said suddenly. I mean, obviously you can't leave in this weather. The storm's supposed to last through tomorrow at least. You and the babies should stay here until it passes. Tom looked around the house, then down at his sleeping son. I don't want to impose. You've already done so much. You'll impose more if you freeze to death in my driveway, Rachel said with a small smile. Besides, it's been just me here for a while now. I've got plenty of room. 4 bedrooms upstairs, though I've been sleeping down here since. She gestured at her crutches. Stairs aren't my friend right now. What happened? Tom asked, then quickly added, Sorry, that's none of my business. Car accident, Rachel said simply. 3 months ago. Shattered my ankle. Had surgery. It's healing, but slowly. She didn't mention David, didn't mention how he'd left her when she needed him most. That was a story for another time. Maybe never. Tom shifted little Luke in his arms. I should probably put them down somewhere they can sleep properly. Is there a room where I could set up? Rachel thought for a moment. Her living room had a large playpen that had belonged to her cousin's kids. She'd been storing it in the garage. Actually, let me show you something. It took some maneuvering, but between the 2 of them, they managed to bring the playpen in from the garage and set it up by the fireplace. Rachel found some clean sheets to line it with. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and safe. As they laid the twins down, both babies finally surrendering to sleep, Tom looked at Rachel with an expression she couldn't quite read. You're good with them, he said. Rachel felt something twist in her chest. She turned away, reaching for her crutches. I'll show you where the guest room is. You must be exhausted. I can sleep on the couch, Tom protested. Really, I don't want to put you out more than I already have. Don't be ridiculous. It's freezing and you need actual rest. The babies will probably wake up in a few hours anyway. Rachel led him toward the hallway. The guest room is down here on the 1st floor. Bathroom's right next door. There are towels in the cabinet. Tom followed her, carrying his small duffel bag. At the doorway to the guest room, he paused. Rachel, I mean it. Thank you. You saved my kids' lives tonight. She wanted to say something casual to brush it off, but the sincerity in his voice stopped her. You would have done the same, she said instead. After Tom disappeared into the guest room, Rachel made her way back to the living room. She stood there for a long moment, looking at the 2 sleeping babies in the playpen. The house felt different, less empty, less quiet. The loneliness that had been her constant companion for months seemed to have retreated, just a little bit. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside, 3 strangers had found unexpected shelter. And though none of them knew it yet, this night would change everything. Rachel woke to the sound of crying. For a confused moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then reality settled in. The babies, Tom, the storm. She grabbed her crutches and made her way to the living room as quickly as she could. Tom was already there, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. He had Lily in one arm, trying to warm a bottle with his free hand while Luke screamed from the playpen. The morning light coming through the windows showed just how much snow had fallen. Rachel's truck was buried. The fence posts were barely visible. They weren't going anywhere today. Here, Rachel said, moving to the playpen. She picked up Luke, settling him against her shoulder despite the awkwardness of balancing on one good leg. I've got him. Tom looked at her with tired gratitude. I didn't want to wake you. I tried to keep them quiet, but they're both hungry and I only have 2 hands. It's fine, Rachel said, swaying gently with Luke. The baby's cries softened against her shoulder. She'd forgotten how good this felt, holding a child, how natural it seemed even though she'd never had one of her own. They worked together to feed the twins. Tom showed Rachel how he liked the bottles warmed, not too hot. He explained that Lily was pickier than her brother, that she'd refuse to eat if the temperature wasn't exactly right. Luke would drink anything, anytime, and often spit half of it back up. You're a natural at this, Rachel said, watching him burp Lily with practiced ease. Tom gave a tired laugh. I've had 6 months to figure it out. Believe me, those first few weeks were a disaster. I didn't know which end was up. My sister had to come stay with me for a month just to keep us all alive. After the babies were fed and changed, Tom insisted on making breakfast. Rachel protested, but he was already moving around her kitchen like he belonged there. You're letting us stay here, he said firmly. The least I can do is cook. Besides, you should rest that ankle. Rachel watched him work, noting how he moved with quiet efficiency. He found the eggs in her fridge, the bread in the pantry, the coffee filters in the cabinet. He made scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy, but it was the first time in months someone had cooked for her. They ate at her small kitchen table while the babies dozed in their playpen. Outside, the wind had died down some, but snow still fell steadily. The weatherman on the radio said the roads wouldn't be cleared until at least tomorrow. Tell me about the ranch, Tom said, looking out the window. How long have you had it? It was my grandfather's originally, Rachel explained. He bought it in the 50s, raised cattle. My dad took over in the 80s, but he got sick about 5 years ago. Cancer. He left it to me when he passed. My brother didn't want it. He moved to California, works in tech or something. And you've been running it alone. Rachel looked down at her plate. I had help before. My ex-husband, David, he actually loved ranch work more than I did. But after the accident, things changed. He said he didn't sign up to take care of an invalid. His word, not mine. Tom's jaw tightened. He sounds like a real piece of work. Yeah, well. Rachel pushed her eggs around with her fork. Turns out when things get hard, you find out who people really are. He found someone else 2 weeks after he moved out. They're getting married in the spring. I'm sorry, Tom said, and he sounded like he meant it. That's rough. They cleaned up the breakfast dishes together, falling into an easy rhythm. Tom washed while Rachel dried, setting things aside when reaching became too difficult. When Lily started fussing again, Rachel automatically moved to check on her while Tom finished the last of the pans. The day passed in a strange, comfortable pattern. The babies demanded attention every few hours. Between feedings and diaper changes, Tom went outside to check on Rachel's horses. He came back covered in snow, reporting that they were fine, but the barn door had been hanging loose. I fixed it, he said, stomping snow off his boots. Hope that's okay. I noticed a few other things out there that could use some work if you want help while we're stuck here. Rachel felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. You don't have to do that. I want to, Tom said simply. Besides, keeping busy helps. Gives me something to do besides worry about when we can get out of here. That afternoon, while the babies napped, Tom ventured out again. Rachel watched from the window as he cleared a path from the house to the barn. Then he started working on the fence that had been leaning for weeks. She'd meant to fix it herself, but between the crutches and the pain, she'd kept putting it off. When Tom came back inside, his cheeks were red from cold, but he was smiling. You've got a good property here, he said. Just needs a little maintenance. I know, Rachel admitted. I've been letting things slide since the accident. It's hard to keep up with everything when you can barely walk. Tom pulled off his gloves and warmed his hands by the fire. Must be tough doing it all alone. It is, Rachel said quietly. She hadn't admitted that to anyone before. Not to her brother, who called once a month if she was lucky. Not to her friends in town who'd slowly stopped visiting. Not even to herself, really. Some days I think about selling. Moving into town, getting a small apartment somewhere. Someplace I could manage. But you don't want to, Tom said. It wasn't a question. No, Rachel said. I don't. This place is all I have left of my family. My dad loved it here. He used to say this land was part of our blood. I feel like if I sell, I'm giving up on him. On everything he built, Tom nodded slowly. My dad was a rancher too. Down in Texas, he always said land has memory. It remembers the people who loved it, who worked it, who bled for it. I think he was right. That evening, they made dinner together. Tom found some chicken in the freezer and vegetables in the fridge. He made a simple stew that filled the house with warmth and good smells. Rachel set the table, managing it better now that she was getting used to moving around with Tom there to help if she needed it. The twins were awake and alert during dinner, watching everything with wide eyes from their playpen. Lily grabbed at her toes, discovering them like they were the most fascinating things in the world. Luke blew spit bubbles and laughed at himself. They're beautiful, Rachel said, watching them. You're doing a good job with them. Tom's expression grew sad. I hope so. Some days I don't feel like I'm enough, you know? Their mom was supposed to be here for all this. She was supposed to teach Lily how to be strong, how to stand up for herself. She was supposed to show Luke how to be gentle, how to care for people. He paused. I'm just one person. How can I be both parents? Rachel understood that feeling more than he knew. You're here, she said. That's what matters. You're showing up every day, taking care of them, keeping them safe. That's what being a parent is it? Tom looked at her. You sound pretty sure for someone who says she's never had kids. Rachel felt her throat tighten. She hadn't planned to tell him, but something about the firelight and the quiet house made her want to share. I can't have them, she said. The accident did more damage than just my ankle. I had internal injuries. They had to do emergency surgery. One of those things you don't think about until it's too late to matter. Tom was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. That's not fair. No, Rachel agreed. It's not. But life isn't fair, is it? We don't get to choose what happens to us. We just get to choose how we deal with it. They sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the babies play. Outside, the storm had finally stopped. Stars appeared in the clearing sky, bright and cold. The world was buried in white, pristine and untouched. Tom stood up to check on the twins, and Rachel noticed how naturally he moved between them, adjusting Lily's blanket, retrieving Luke's dropped toy. He was a good father. Anyone could see that. The kind of father every child deserved. Thank you, Tom said suddenly, turning to face her. For everything. Not just a shelter. For this. For making us feel like we're not alone for a little while. Rachel smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. You're not alone. None of us are. Not tonight anyway. As she lay in bed later, listening to the sounds of Tom settling the babies for the night, Rachel realized something had shifted. The house didn't feel empty anymore. The silence wasn't suffocating. For the first time since David left, since the accident stole her future, she felt something other than pain and loneliness. She felt hope, small and fragile, like a candle flame in the dark, but it was there, warming her from the inside out. Tomorrow, Tom and the babies would probably leave. The roads would clear, his truck would get fixed, and they'd continue on to Billings. But tonight they were here. And that was enough. Morning brought a phone call that changed everything. Tom's sister called while he was feeding Luke, and Rachel could hear the worry in her voice even from across the room. After he hung up, Tom looked troubled. The highway's still closed, he said. They're saying at least another 2 days, maybe 3. There was a pileup yesterday during the storm. They have to clear it before they can even start plowing our route. He looked at Rachel apologetically. I'm sorry. I know you didn't sign up for house guests for this long. Rachel surprised herself with how quickly she answered. Stay, it's fine, really. And she meant it. The thought of them leaving, of the house going quiet again, bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Tom studied her face. Are you sure? The babies are a lot of work. The noise, the mess, the constant chaos, I'm sure, Rachel said firmly. She looked at Luke, who was happily gumming his bottle. Besides, you've been fixing everything around here. I'm getting the better end of this deal. That afternoon, Tom made good on his promise to help more. While the babies napped, he went through Rachel's entire barn. He found rotted boards that needed replacing, organized tools that had been scattered, and even fixed the broken latch on the hay storage. Rachel watched from the barn door, leaning on her crutches. You don't have to do all this. Tom looked up from the fence post he was resetting. I know, but I want to. You've been struggling out here alone. trying to keep this place running while you heal. Let me help. Why? Rachel asked. I mean, you don't owe me anything. Tom set down his hammer and walked over to her. My wife died 6 months ago. Since then, I've been barely holding on, going through the motions, trying not to drown. These past couple days helping you, being useful, it's the first time I've felt like myself in half a year. He smiled slightly. So really, you're helping me just as much as I'm helping you. Something passed between them then. An understanding. They were both broken in their own ways, both trying to figure out how to keep moving forward. And somehow being stuck together in a snowstorm was helping them both heal. The days fell into a pattern. Tom would wake first when the babies stirred around 6. He'd feed one while Rachel, hearing the commotion, would emerge from her room to help with the other. They'd make breakfast together, Tom doing most of the cooking while Rachel set the table and made coffee. After breakfast, Tom would work on the ranch while the babies napped. He fixed the loose boards on the porch steps. He cleaned out the gutters that Rachel hadn't been able to reach. He organized the storage shed and found things Rachel had forgotten she owned. Rachel found herself looking forward to his return each time he went outside. She'd watch from the window as he worked, noticing things she hadn't before. The way he was patient with difficult tasks, how he talked softly to her horses while he fed them, the careful, thorough way he approached every job. Inside, she was getting better at managing the babies. She learned that Lily liked to be held facing out so she could see everything. Luke preferred to be rocked side to side, not front to back. Both of them would stop crying if you hummed softly, though singing made them cry harder for some reason. You're a natural, Tom said one afternoon, watching Rachel comfort a fussy Lily. Have you spent a lot of time around babies? Rachel shook her head. Not really. My cousin has kids, but they're older now. Teenagers. I guess some things just come naturally when you need them to. What she didn't say was how much she was growing attached, how she'd started listening for their sounds in the morning, how the weight of them in her arms felt right in a way nothing had for months, how the house felt alive with their presence. One evening after the babies were asleep, Tom taught Rachel some exercises for her ankle. He'd noticed her limping more, favoring it. My dad had a bad break once, he explained, guiding her through gentle stretches. Physical therapist taught him these. They helped a lot. Rachel winced as she rotated her foot. Your dad sounds like he was a good man. He was, Tom said softly. Tough as nails, but fair. He taught me that honest work matters more than easy money. That your word is your bond. That family comes first, always. His voice grew thick. I wish he'd lived long enough to meet the twins. He would have loved being a grandfather. Tell me about your wife, Rachel said gently. She'd been curious but hadn't wanted to pry. What was she like? Tom was quiet for a long moment. Maria was sunshine. That's the only way I can describe her. She made everything brighter just by being there. She grew up on a ranch in New Mexico, spoke Spanish and English, and could outride any man I ever met. He smiled at the memory. She wanted a big family. 5 kids, she used to say. A whole house full of noise and chaos. I'm sorry you lost her, Rachel said. I can't imagine how hard that must be. The worst part is the guilt, Tom admitted. The day she went into labor, we'd had a fight. Something stupid about money. About whether we could afford to have me take time off work when the babies came. I was frustrated and said some things I didn't mean. Then she started having contractions way too early. By the time we got to the hospital, things were already going wrong. He rubbed his face with both hands. The doctor said it wasn't the stress, that the complications were already there, waiting to happen. But I can't help wondering. And I never got to apologize. Never got to tell her I didn't mean any of it. Rachel reached over and squeezed his hand. She knew. Trust me, she knew. They sat there in the firelight, 2 wounded people finding unexpected comfort in each other's company. Outside, fresh snow began to fall, soft and quiet. Inside, the house was warm and peaceful. The next morning, Rachel attempted something she'd been afraid to try. The stairs. She needed clothes from her bedroom upstairs, and she was tired of asking Tom to fetch things for her. She made it up 3 steps before her ankle gave way. She gasped, feeling herself start to fall backward. Then Tom's arms were around her, catching her, steadying her. They stood there, frozen. His face was inches from hers. She could feel his breath warm against her cheek. For a moment that stretched like honey, neither of them moved. Then Luke started crying from the living room, and the spell broke. Tom carefully helped Rachel back down the stairs. Neither of them mentioned what had almost happened. But something had shifted between them. something neither was quite ready to name. That evening, Tom's sister called again. His truck was fixed and ready. The roads would be clear by tomorrow afternoon. They could leave the day after. Tom delivered the news over dinner, his voice carefully neutral. "We'll get out of your hair soon. I'm sure you're ready to have your house back." Rachel looked at the babies in their playpen, at Tom sitting across from her at the table that had been empty for so long, at the toys now scattered across her living room floor, at the life that had filled her empty house. "Take your time," she heard herself say. "There's no rush." But there was a rush, she realized as she lay in bed that night. Time was running out. Soon they'd be gone and she'd be alone again. The thought made her chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. She'd gotten used to this. The sounds of babies in the night, Tom's footsteps on the floor above, the smell of coffee he made each morning, the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. Tomorrow would come too soon. And Rachel wasn't ready. Not ready for the silence. Not ready for the emptiness. Not ready to say goodbye to something she was only just beginning to understand she wanted to keep. The next evening had a different feeling to it. Tomorrow they would leave, and both Rachel and Tom seemed to sense they were running out of time. After the babies were settled for the night, they sat by the fireplace with cups of tea, neither quite ready to end the day. "Can I ask you something?" Tom said, breaking the comfortable silence. "What happened with your ex?" "I mean, really happened. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Rachel stared into her tea. She hadn't talked about this with anyone. Not her brother, who'd said she was better off without David anyway. Not her friends, who'd taken sides or disappeared entirely. But something about Tom made her want to be honest. "David and I met in college," she began. "He was studying agriculture, I was getting my business degree. We got married young, probably too young. Moved here to take over the ranch from my dad when he got sick. For a while it was good. Really good." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Then Dad died and things got harder. Running the ranch was more work than either of us expected. We started talking about kids, but we kept putting it off. Always next year. Always when things settled down." She laughed bitterly. Things never settled down. Tom listened without interrupting, his attention fully on her. "The accident happened on a Wednesday," Rachel continued. "I was coming back from town. A truck ran a red light and hit me broadside. I don't remember much about the impact, just waking up in the hospital 3 days later. David was there. He cried when I opened my eyes. Said he'd been so scared." She set down her tea, her hands shaking slightly. "The doctors explained everything. The shattered ankle, the internal injuries, the emergency hysterectomy they'd had to do to save my life. I remember feeling numb, like they were talking about someone else. David stayed for the first month. He helped me with physical therapy, brought me things, made sure I took my medication, but I could see it in his eyes. The burden I'd become, the future we'd planned was gone, no kids, no active partner to help run the ranch. Just me and my crutches and my useless ankle." Tom's jaw was tight. "That's when he left?" 6 weeks after I got out of the hospital.
"He said he loved me, but he couldn't do this."
Couldn't spend his life taking care of someone who'd never be the same. He said I deserved someone who could accept this version of me. But he wasn't that person." Rachel wiped her eyes roughly. "The worst part? He was honest. He didn't cheat, didn't lie. He just couldn't handle it. And I can't even be properly angry because at least he was truthful." "You can absolutely be angry," Tom said firmly. "Marriage isn't about only staying when things are easy. It's about showing up when things get hard. He made vows. He broke them." "You have every right to be furious, are you?" Rachel asked. "Angry at your wife for dying?" The question hung in the air between them. Tom was quiet for so long Rachel thought she'd overstepped. Then he spoke, his voice raw. "Yes," he admitted. "God help me, yes. Some days I'm so angry I can barely breathe. She left me alone with 2 babies I don't know how to raise. She left me to figure out formula and diapers and colic and teething without her. She left me to be both parents when I can barely manage being one." He stood up, pacing. "And then I feel guilty for being angry because it's not her fault. She didn't choose to die. She didn't want to leave us. But the anger is still there, right alongside the grief and the love and the desperate missing her." Rachel understood. Boy, did she understand. "I'm angry too," she confessed. "At David, at the driver who hit me, at my own body for braking, at God or fate or whatever put me on that road at that exact moment. I'm angry that I'll never have children. That my marriage ended. That I might lose this ranch because I can't take care of it properly anymore. They looked at each other. Two people carrying hurt they rarely let anyone see. The day Maria went into labor, Tom said, sitting back down, we'd been fighting about money. I'd wanted to take a month off when the babies came. She said we couldn't afford it, that we needed every paycheck. I got angry, said some things I shouldn't have. Told her she was being stubborn and stupid. His voice cracked. Then she grabbed her stomach and said something was wrong. The babies were coming too early. Way too early. We got to the hospital and everything happened so fast. Complications. Emergency C-section. The babies were fine, but Maria kept bleeding. They tried everything, but she was just gone. Tom, Rachel said softly. I never apologized, he continued. My last real conversation with my wife was a fight where I called her stupid, and I never got to take it back. Never got to tell her I didn't mean it. That I was just scared about money and being a father and whether I'd be any good at it. Rachel moved to sit beside him, forgetting about her crutches, her bad ankle. She knew, she said. Tom, she knew you loved her. One fight doesn't erase years of love. How do you know? He asked, his eyes red. How can you be sure? Because love isn't about never fighting. It's about always coming back. And you would have. You would have apologized the moment she came out of that delivery room. She knew that about you. She knew who you were. Tom buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. Rachel put her arms around him, this man who'd been carrying so much weight alone. They stayed like that, two broken people holding each other up. When Tom finally pulled away, he looked embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart on you. Don't apologize, Rachel said. We're both falling apart a little. That's allowed. They talked long into the night after that. Tom told her about growing up on his father's ranch in Texas, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about his father teaching him that hard work and honesty were the only things a man really needed. Rachel told him about her childhood on this very ranch, about her mother, who'd died when Rachel was 12, about her father, who'd worked himself nearly to death keeping this place running, about the guilt she felt now letting it fall into disrepair. You're not letting it fall apart, Tom said. You're surviving. There's a difference. You had a major trauma. You lost your marriage. You're healing from serious injuries. Just getting through each day is an accomplishment. I want it to be more than just survival, though, Rachel admitted. I want to actually live again. I want to wake up and feel excited about the day instead of just dreading all the things I can't do anymore. Do you feel that way now? Tom asked. Right now, I mean? Rachel thought about it. The past week had been different. She'd woken up to baby sounds and Tom making coffee. She'd spent her days helping with the twins, watching Tom work on the ranch, feeling useful and needed. She'd gone to bed tired but satisfied. No, she said slowly. I don't feel that way now. This week has been good. Really good. Tom held her gaze. It's been good for me too. I haven't felt this settled since Maria died. Having someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who understands that life is hard but we keep going anyway. The fire had burned down to embers. The house was quiet except for the occasional baby sound from the living room. Outside the stars were brilliant against the black sky. I don't want to leave, Tom said suddenly. I know that's crazy. We barely know each other. But the thought of packing up tomorrow and driving away makes me feel sick. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. Then don't, not forever. Just stay a few more days. The roads are clear, but that doesn't mean you have to rush off. Your sister is expecting you, Rachel added, trying to be practical even though every part of her wanted him to say yes. My sister will understand, Tom said. She's been worried about me, about the babies. She'll be happy if I tell her I've found a place where we're doing okay. They sat in the dimness, possibilities stretching between them. Neither was quite ready to name what was happening. But they both felt it. The connection, the rightness, the sense that maybe, just maybe, they'd found something neither had been looking for. Stay, Rachel said again, softer this time. Please, Tom reached over and took her hand. Okay, he said simply. We'll stay. 5 days turned into a week. The week turned into 10 days. Tom called his sister and explained he was staying a bit longer. She was understanding, even supportive. You sound better, she told him. Lighter. Stay as long as you need to. The routine they'd fallen into became more natural. Rachel found herself healing in more ways than just physical. Her ankle was getting stronger with the exercises Tom had taught her. She could walk short distances without the crutches now, though she kept them nearby for safety. One morning, she woke to find Tom in her kitchen, teaching Lily how to hold a spoon. The baby was making an absolute mess, smashing food everywhere, but Tom was patient and encouraging. "That's it, sweetheart," he said softly. "You're doing great." Rachel's chest felt tight watching them. This man who'd shown up desperate and scared had become someone she couldn't imagine her days without. The realization should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Morning," Tom said, noticing her. His smile was warm, reaching his eyes in a way it hadn't when they first met. "Coffee's ready. I made extra because I know you're not human until you've had at least 2 cups. You're learning my secrets," Rachel joked, pouring herself a mug. She settled at the table next to Luke, who immediately reached for her. She picked him up, and he snuggled against her shoulder with the complete trust only babies have. After breakfast, Tom announced he wanted to work on the barn's roof. Some shingles had come loose during the storm. Rachel insisted on coming out to help, or at least keep him company. "You don't need to," Tom said. "You should rest that ankle." "My ankle is fine," Rachel protested. "And I'm going stir crazy in this house. Let me at least hand you tools or something." They worked together all morning, the babies bundled up in a portable playpen Tom had set up in a sunny spot. Rachel couldn't climb the ladder, but she organized supplies, held the ladder steady, and kept Tom company. They talked about everything and nothing. Favorite movies. Worst jobs they'd ever had. Places they wanted to travel someday. "I've always wanted to see the ocean," Rachel admitted. "Real ocean, not just pictures. My dad promised he'd take me when I graduated high school, but he was too sick by then." "The Gulf of Mexico is beautiful," Tom said from the roof. "Maria and I went there once before the babies. The water's warm and green. We spent 3 days doing absolutely nothing but lying on the beach." His voice was wistful. "I'd like to take the twins someday. Let them feel sand between their toes." Rachel noticed he could talk about Maria now without the sharp edge of pain. The grief was still there, she could hear it, but it had softened somehow. Time and healing working their slow magic. That afternoon, while the babies napped, Tom asked Rachel if she wanted to try walking without her crutches. Really walking, not just short distances. "I don't know," Rachel said nervously. "What if I fall?" "Then I'll catch you," Tom said simply. "Come on, let's see what you can do." They started in the living room. Tom stood a few feet away, his arms out. "Walk to me," he said. Rachel took a tentative step. Her ankle held. Another step. Still good. By the 3rd step, she was gaining confidence. By the 5th, she was almost at Tom. Then her ankle twisted slightly and she stumbled forward. Tom caught her just like he'd promised. His hands were on her waist, steadying her. She grabbed his shoulders for balance. And there they were, inches apart, breathing hard. "I've got you," Tom said softly. Rachel looked up at him. His eyes were dark and warm. She could see flecks of gold in them she'd never noticed before. Her heart was pounding, and it had nothing to do with the exercise. "Tom," she whispered. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't want to. His lips touched hers, gentle and questioning. Rachel kissed him back, her hands moving from his shoulders to his neck. The kiss deepened, months of loneliness and need pouring into it. Then Lily started crying, her wail piercing the moment. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Tom rested his forehead against Rachel's for just a second before stepping back. "I should," he gestured toward the living room. "Yeah," Rachel said, her lips still tingling. "Yeah, the babies." They didn't talk about the kiss the rest of that day. But everything felt different now. More charged, more real. When their hands brushed passing dishes at dinner, electricity sparked. When they sat on the couch that evening, they were more aware of the space between them. The next morning, Tom received a call from a ranch near Billings. They were hiring, and his sister had put in a good word. They wanted to interview him next week. "That's great," Rachel said, forcing enthusiasm into her voice. "That's really great, Tom." But it wasn't great. It was the opposite of great. It meant he was leaving. Really leaving. Not in some distant future, but soon. Next week. Maybe the week after if he got the job. He and the babies would move to Billings, and Rachel would be alone again. Tom was quiet during breakfast. The babies seemed to sense the tension, fussing more than usual. Rachel tried to act normal, but everything felt fragile, like glass about to shatter. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Tom found Rachel on the porch. She was bundled in a heavy coat, staring out at the stars. "Cold out here," he said, joining her. "I like the cold," Rachel said. "It's honest. You know what you're getting." Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I don't want to go to Billings." Rachel's heart jumped. "What? I need the job. I need stability for the kids. But I don't want to leave here." "Leave you?" He turned to face her. "Rachel, this past week and a half has been the best I've felt since Maria died. Being here, helping with the ranch, having someone to talk to at the end of the day. The twins are happy. I'm happy. I don't want to give that up." "Then don't," Rachel said, even though the practical part of her brain was screaming that this was crazy. "Stay here. There are ranches around here hiring. You could find work locally and live where?" Tom asked. "I can't keep imposing on you forever." Rachel took a deep breath. This was insane. They'd known each other less than 2 weeks. But life was short and unpredictable. She'd learned that the hard way. "What if you didn't have to leave?" she said. "What if you stayed here on the ranch? There's plenty of room. You and the babies could have the upstairs. You could help me run this place properly. We could figure it out together." Tom stared at her. "Rachel, that's a huge ask. You barely know me?" "I know enough," she said. "I know you're kind and hardworking. I know you're a good father. I know the past 10 days have been the happiest I've been in months. Maybe years," she laughed nervously. "Look, I know this is crazy. We can take it slow. Separate rooms, no pressure. Just try it. See if it works." Tom's expression was a mix of hope and fear. What if it doesn't work? What if we mess this up? What if we don't? Rachel countered. What if this is exactly what we both need? Someone to share the load with. Someone who understands what it's like to keep going when everything's hard. The stars wheeled overhead. Inside, one of the babies made a small sound in sleep. Tom reached for Rachel's hand. "Okay," he said. "Let's try it. Let's see what happens." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. Hopeful tears. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Tom said, pulling her into a hug. She buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, feeling safe in a way she hadn't in so long. They stood there on the porch, 2 wounded people choosing to risk being hurt again, choosing hope over fear, choosing to see what might grow between them. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. It was a beginning. 2 weeks into their new arrangement, reality started to settle in. Tom had moved his things upstairs, turning 2 of Rachel's spare bedrooms into spaces for him and the twins. They'd established boundaries, separate sleeping areas, no assumptions about where this was heading. Taking things one day at a time, but it was harder than either had expected. Living together meant seeing each other at their worst. Rachel when she was frustrated with her still healing ankle, snapping over small things. Tom when he was exhausted from a night of crying babies, short-tempered and withdrawn. One morning, they had their first real argument. Tom had rearranged the kitchen without asking, putting things in places that made sense to him but confused Rachel. She'd limped around looking for the coffee filters, getting more irritated by the second. "You can't just change things without asking," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I was trying to make it more efficient," Tom shot back. "Half the stuff in these cabinets makes no sense." "It makes sense to me." "This is my house," the words hung between them. "My house, not our house." Rachel saw Tom's face close off and she immediately regretted it. "You're right," he said stiffly. "It's your house. I'll put everything back." "Tom, I didn't mean," but he'd already left the room, Lily in his arms. Rachel stood in the kitchen, feeling awful. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. The complications, the hurt feelings, the way 2 people trying to share space could bump into each other's bruises. They apologized later, both acknowledging they were still figuring things out. But the moment had revealed something neither wanted to face. This arrangement, no matter how much they both wanted it to work, was complicated. Tom had been applying for jobs at nearby ranches. He'd had 2 interviews, both promising. One ranch in particular seemed interested. The owner, an older man named Bill Harrison, had called Tom back twice. The job would pay decent money, include health insurance, even provide a small house on the property for him and the twins. "That's wonderful," Rachel said when Tom told her, trying to mean it. "That would give you real stability." Tom didn't look happy, though. "The house is tiny. 2 bedrooms. And it's 40 minutes from here. I'd have to leave at 5 in the morning to get there by 6 when my shift starts. You'd have your own place, though, Rachel pointed out, even though the thought of him leaving made her chest tight. Independence. Your own space. I don't want my own space, Tom said quietly. I want to be here. That evening, Tom's sister called. She'd been patient, understanding even about Tom delaying his move to Billings. But now she had news. Her husband's brother owned a construction company and was looking for a foreman. The job paid well, had great benefits, and they'd already discussed it. Tom was practically hired if he wanted it. You have to think about what's best for the twins, his sister said, her voice gentle but firm through the phone. Tom had it on speaker while he gave Luke a bath, and Rachel could hear every word from the hallway where she was folding laundry. They need stability, his sister continued. They need you settled somewhere permanent, not living in someone else's house figuring things out day by day. Come to Billings. We'll help you. You won't be alone. After the call, Tom was quiet. He got both babies down for the night and then sat on the porch, staring out at the dark fields. Rachel joined him, 2 mugs of tea in her hands. She's not wrong, Tom said, accepting the tea. The twins do need stability. They need a real home, not this temporary situation. This doesn't feel temporary, Rachel said softly. Doesn't it? Tom turned to look at her. Rachel, be honest. What are we doing here? You took us in during a storm. That was kindness. But now we're still here and we're in this weird in-between place. We kissed once. We like each other. But we're both scared and we're both broken and neither of us knows what we're actually building here. Rachel didn't have an answer. He was right. They were in limbo, both afraid to move forward but equally afraid to let go. The job in Billings is good, Tom continued. My sister and her husband would help with the twins. I'd have family support, a decent income, a path forward. He paused. It makes sense. And the ranch 40 minutes from here? Rachel asked. That job makes sense too. Yeah, but that means leaving you still doing all this alone. You need help here, Rachel, real help. Not just someone crashing in your spare rooms. You're not just crashing, Rachel protested. You've fixed half the problems on this property. You've helped me more in 2 weeks than anyone has in months, but is that enough? Tom asked. Is that what you want? A handyman who happens to have babies? Or do you want something more? The question sat between them, heavy and unavoidable. Rachel's heart knew the answer, but her head was screaming caution. She'd been hurt before. Badly. Was she really ready to risk that again with a man she'd known for such a short time? I don't know, she admitted. Tom, I care about you. I care about the twins. These weeks have been amazing. But you're right, we're in this strange place and I don't know what's next. Tom nodded slowly. My sister wants an answer by the end of the week. The Billings job starts in 2 weeks if I take it. And the ranch job here? They need someone starting next month, 1 week. They had 1 week to figure out what they were doing. Rachel felt panic rising in her chest. How do you make a decision this big in 7 days? How do you know if what you're feeling is real or just loneliness finding another lonely person? The next few days were tense. Tom and Rachel were overly polite with each other, both trying not to pressure the other into a decision. Tom spent more time out working on the property, coming in only for meals and baby care. Rachel threw herself into paperwork for the ranch. Bills and plans she'd been avoiding. They were hiding from each other and they both knew it. On Thursday, 3 days before Tom needed to give his sister an answer, Rachel's brother called. He was coming through Montana on business and wanted to stop by. Rachel hadn't seen him in over a year, not since before the accident. Greg arrived that evening in an expensive rental car, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Rachel's truck. He hugged her carefully, noting the crutches leaning against the wall even though she wasn't using them much anymore. You look good, he said, though his tone was doubtful. Better than I expected. Then he met Tom and the twins and his eyebrows rose. You didn't mention you had a roommate, he said to Rachel, his voice carefully neutral. Over dinner, Greg asked pointed questions. How long had Tom been staying? What were his intentions? Where was this going? Rachel felt like she was being interrogated by a protective parent, even though Greg had barely been around since their father died. After the babies were in bed and Tom had excused himself, giving them privacy, Greg got straight to the point. Rachel, what are you doing? He asked. You let some stranger move in with his kids? You barely know this guy. He's not a stranger, Rachel defended. And it's not what you think. He got stuck here during the storm and we've been helping each other out. Helping each other? Greg repeated skeptically. Sis, I can see how you look at him. And how he looks at you. This is more than just helping each other out. Rachel felt her defenses rise. So what if it is? You don't get to judge my choices, Greg. You haven't been here. You haven't seen how hard it's been. I know, Greg said, his voice softening. And I'm sorry about that. I should have been here more after the accident. But Rachel, you're vulnerable right now. You're recovering, you're lonely, your marriage just ended. This guy showed up at the perfect time to seem like a savior. He's not, Rachel started, but Greg held up his hand. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. Maybe he's great. But I am saying you need to be careful. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. Don't tie yourself to someone just because you're afraid of being alone. His words hit harder than Rachel wanted to admit. Was that what she was doing? Holding on to Tom because she couldn't face going back to the loneliness? After Greg left the next morning, Rachel couldn't stop thinking about his words. She watched Tom with the twins, saw how natural he was with them, how patient. She thought about the past weeks, how right it had felt having them here. But she also thought about David, about how sure she'd been that marriage would last forever, about how quickly promises could be broken when things got hard. That evening, Tom found her in the barn, supposedly checking on the horses, but really just hiding. We need to talk, he said. Rachel's heart sank. Those words never led anywhere good. Okay, Tom took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what's best for the twins, about what they need. And Rachel, they need stability. They need a father who's not confused about where he's living or what he's doing with his life. Tom, let me finish, he said gently. I think I should take the Billings job. Move in with my sister like originally planned. Give the twins a stable home with family support. He paused, his voice rough. It's the responsible thing to do. Rachel felt something crack in her chest. What about us? What about what we've been building here? What have we been building? Tom asked, and he sounded tired. Rachel, we're both scared. We've both been hurt. Maybe this has just been two lonely people finding comfort in each other for a little while. Maybe that's all it was meant to be. You don't believe that, Rachel whispered. I don't know what I believe anymore, Tom admitted. But I do know my kids come first. The next 2 days were the hardest Rachel had experienced since the accident. Maybe harder. Tom kept to his decision, making arrangements with his sister, packing their belongings. The house felt hollow even though they were all still in it. Rachel threw herself into ranch work, pushing her healing ankle harder than she should. She needed the physical pain to distract from the emotional ache. Tom worked alongside her, but they barely spoke, both protecting themselves from the goodbye that was coming. The twins seemed to sense something was wrong. Lily cried more than usual, refusing to settle. Luke clung to whoever was holding him, his little face worried. Even the babies knew they were losing something. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Tom had everything packed in his truck. His sister was expecting them by evening. The twins were dressed in traveling clothes, looking impossibly small in their car seats. Rachel stood in the kitchen, making coffee she didn't want, just to have something to do with her hands. Tom came in, Lily on his hip. I made some sandwiches for the road, Rachel said, gesturing to the counter. And there's juice boxes in the cooler. Luke likes the apple ones better than grape. I know, Tom said softly. Rachel, you should get going, she interrupted, not looking at him. It's a long drive and you want to arrive before dark. Tom set Lily in her portable seat and walked over to Rachel. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Don't do this. Don't act like this doesn't matter. Rachel felt tears threatening. It's easier this way. No, it's not. Tom's voice was rough with emotion. Rachel, look at me. She finally met his eyes. They were red-rimmed, tired. He looked like he hadn't slept any better than she had. I need to tell you something before I go, Tom said. These past weeks with you have been incredible. You made me feel human again. You made me remember that life could be good even after tragedy. Watching you with my kids, seeing you laugh again, rebuilding this ranch together. It was everything I didn't know I needed. Tom, please don't. I'm falling in love with you, he said. Maybe I've already fallen. I don't know. But I know leaving feels wrong in every possible way. Rachel's breath caught. Then why are you doing it? Because I'm scared, Tom admitted. I'm terrified, actually. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if 6 months from now we realize this was just two broken people clinging to each other? My kids would get attached. You'd get attached. And then what? But what if it does work? Rachel whispered. What if this is real and we're throwing it away because we're too afraid to try? Tom rested his forehead against hers. I wish I knew the answer to that. They stood like that for a long moment, both crying now, both holding on and letting go at the same time. Then Luke started fussing in the living room and the spell broke. Tom pulled away, wiping his eyes. I should get them in the truck. Rachel watched him gather the babies, putting Luke in his car seat, checking that Lily's straps were secure. He loaded the last bag, closed the truck bed. Every action bringing them closer to goodbye. At the truck door, Tom turned back one more time. If you ever need anything, I know, Rachel said. Thank you for everything, Tom, for helping with the ranch. For being here. For making me feel alive again, she didn't say. For showing me what my life could be. For making me hope. Tom climbed into the truck, started the engine. Rachel stood on her porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching the truck roll down her driveway. At the end it paused. For 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then it turned onto the road and they were gone. Rachel walked back into her house. The silence was deafening. Louder than it had ever been before because now she knew what the alternative sounded like. She saw the playpen still set up by the fireplace. Tom's coffee mug in the dish drainer. A tiny sock that had been missed under the couch. She made it to the couch before the tears came. Great gasping sobs that she'd been holding back for days. She cried for Tom, for the twins, for the future they might have had. She cried for herself, for being too scared to ask him to stay, for letting fear win again. The house phone rang. It was probably her brother checking in. Rachel ignored it. She didn't want to talk to anyone. Didn't want to hear you'll be fine or it was for the best or any other platitude that felt like sandpaper on her raw heart. She must have dozed off on the couch because she woke to knocking. Urgent, repeated knocking on her front door. Rachel looked at the clock. 2 hours had passed since Tom left. The knocking came again, probably her neighbor checking on her. Rachel considered ignoring it, but the knocking was insistent. She dragged herself to the door and pulled it open. Tom stood there, both babies in his arms. His face was streaked with tears, his expression a mix of determination and terror. I made it 20 miles, he said, his voice breaking. 20 miles and I couldn't do it. I pulled over and I looked at my kids and I thought about the life we'd have in Billings. My sister's house. A construction job. It would be fine, safe, stable. He shifted Lily higher on his hip, but then I thought about being there without you. About Luke and Lily growing up never knowing you. About me spending the rest of my life wondering, what if? And I couldn't do it, Rachel. I couldn't drive away from you. Rachel's heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to stay. If you'll have us. Tom's words came faster now, tumbling over each other. I know it's crazy. We barely know each other. It might not work. We might fail spectacularly, but what if we don't? What if this is exactly what we're both supposed to do? Tom, I love you, he said firmly. I know it's fast and it's probably too soon to say it, but I do. I love how you hum when you're cooking. How you talk to the horses like they're people. How you've loved my kids like they're yours. I love your strength and your stubbornness and how you refuse to give up even when everything's hard. He took a shaky breath. I want to help you run this ranch. I want to wake up to coffee you made and go to bed knowing you're just down the hall. I want my kids to grow up here, learning to ride horses and help with chores. I want to build a life with you, Rachel. A real life, if you want that too. Rachel was crying again, but these were different tears. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, Tom said. I'm absolutely terrified, but I'm more scared of not trying, of spending my life wondering what could have been. Rachel looked at him standing there, this man who'd shown up in a blizzard and turned her whole world upside down. She thought about her empty house, her lonely days. She thought about Greg's warning to not make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. But this didn't feel temporary. It felt like coming home. Yes, she said, her voice getting stronger. Yes, I want you to stay. I want all of this. I'm scared too, but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Tom's face transformed. He closed the distance between them, kissing her hard. The babies squished between them, protesting the squeeze. They both laughed and cried, holding each other and the twins in a messy, perfect embrace. We're really doing this? Tom asked, pulling back to look at her. We're really doing this, Rachel confirmed, one day at a time. Figuring it out as we go. One day at a time, Tom agreed. They went inside together. Tom unloaded the truck while Rachel settled the babies in their playpen, which suddenly didn't look temporary anymore. It looked like it belonged, like they all belonged. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Tom and Rachel sat on the porch under the stars. They talked about the future now, not in vague terms, but in real plans. Tom would find work at one of the local ranches. They'd fix up the house together. They'd take things slow in their relationship but be committed to figuring it out. What if people think we're crazy? Rachel asked. Moving this fast? Then they think we're crazy, Tom said, squeezing her hand. The people who matter will understand. And the ones who don't, well, their opinions don't matter anyway. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. I can't believe you came back. I can't believe I almost left, Tom said. That was the stupidest 20 miles I've ever driven. They sat in comfortable silence, the ranch stretching out before them in the darkness. Somewhere an owl hooted. The horses nickered in the barn. Inside, one of the twins made a small sound in their sleep. It was far from perfect. There would be hard days ahead. Arguments and struggles and moments of doubt. But there would also be mornings watching the sunrise together. Evenings teaching the twins to walk. Seasons of growth and change and building something real. Rachel had spent months believing her life was over. That the best parts had already passed. That she'd never feel whole again. She'd been wrong. Sometimes the best parts came when you least expected them. Sometimes they arrived in a blizzard, desperate and afraid. And sometimes, if you were brave enough, you let them stay. 3 months later, Rachel stood in her kitchen without crutches, her ankle finally healed and strong. She was making pancakes while Tom gave the twins their breakfast. It was Saturday morning and the house was full of the comfortable chaos that had become their new normal. Lily, no, we don't throw applesauce, Tom said patiently, wiping the side of his face where she'd flung a spoonful. Inside voices and inside food, remember? Luke giggled at his sister's antics, then promptly dumped his own bowl on the floor. Tom sighed and reached for the paper towels, but he was smiling. You two are a team of tiny terrorists, you know that? Rachel laughed, flipping a pancake. They're 9 months old. Chaos is their job description. The ranch had transformed in those 3 months. Tom had found work at Bill Harrison's place, the ranch 40 minutes away. The hours were long, but Bill was understanding about Tom's situation. He let Tom adjust his schedule around the baby's needs, and the pay was decent. More importantly, Tom came home. Every evening, he came back to Rachel's ranch. Back to their ranch, really. They'd stopped thinking of it as just hers somewhere along the way. Together, they'd repaired the sagging fence along the south pasture, fixed the barn roof properly, painted the house exterior, which had been peeling for years. Rachel had even bought 3 new horses with plans to start a small breeding program. Tom's expertise with animals was helping her see possibilities she'd never considered before. The upstairs wasn't just Tom's space anymore. They'd converted one room into a proper nursery for the twins, with cribs that replaced the portable playpen, bright curtains Rachel had sewn herself, and toys scattered across every surface. Tom's room had become a real bedroom, not just a place to crash, and Rachel's room downstairs remained hers. They'd agreed to take things slow, to not rush the physical relationship. Some nights Tom would join her on the couch to watch a movie, and they'd fall asleep tangled together, but they still maintained separate sleeping spaces. It felt right, like they were building something solid rather than rushing into something that might crumble. You know what today is? Tom asked as he finished cleaning up the breakfast disaster. Saturday? Rachel guessed, setting a plate of pancakes on the table. 3 months since I almost made the biggest mistake of my life, Tom said. 3 months since I turned that truck around. Rachel smiled, walking over to kiss him softly. Best worst decision you ever made? Something like that. Tom pulled her close, swaying slightly like they were dancing to music only they could hear. I've been thinking about something. Dangerous, Rachel teased. I'm serious. Tom pulled back to look at her. I know we said we'd take things slow, and we have been. But Rachel, I don't want slow anymore. I want real. I want permanent. I want to know that this is our ranch, our home, our life together. Rachel's heart started beating faster. What are you saying? Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Rachel's breath caught. He opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small diamond. I'm saying that I love you, that I want to build a life with you, officially, that I want Luke and Lily to grow up with you as their mom, not just the wonderful woman who lives with them. Tom's voice was steady, but his hand shook slightly. "Rachel Bennett, will you marry me?" Rachel looked at the ring, then at Tom's hopeful, nervous face, then at the twins who were watching this interaction with fascinated baby attention. She thought about how far they'd both come, from two broken people who'd found each other in a storm to this moment, standing in a kitchen full of morning light and possibility. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Tom slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. He kissed her properly then, deep and full of promise, while Lily clapped her hands and Luke squealed with delight even though he had no idea what was happening. The ring was simple, nothing fancy, but Rachel loved it immediately. Later, Tom explained he'd driven to town last week, to the same small jeweler where his parents had bought their rings 40 years ago. He'd wanted something with meaning, with history. "It reminded me of you," he said. "Simple, strong, beautiful. No unnecessary flash. Just real." Over the next weeks, they made plans. Nothing elaborate, neither of them wanted a big wedding. They'd go to the courthouse in town, make it official, maybe have a small celebration with Tom's sister and Rachel's brother afterward. Greg was coming around to the idea. He'd visited again last month and seen how happy Rachel was, how Tom treated her like she was precious, how the twins had brought life back to the ranch. He'd pulled Tom aside before leaving and said simply, "You hurt her? I'll drive back here and deal with you personally." Tom had nodded seriously and said, "I'd expect nothing less." Tom's sister was thrilled. She'd been the one encouraging him to follow his heart from the beginning. She promised to come to the wedding and to bring their whole family. "Maria would be so happy for you," she told Tom during a phone call that made him cry. "She'd want you to be loved again, to be happy." The twins were growing fast. Lily had started pulling herself up on furniture, determined to walk before her brother. Luke was content to crawl everywhere at impressive speeds, usually chasing the barn cat who'd adopted them. They both said mama now, though Rachel wasn't sure if they knew it meant her or just thought it was a general word. Either way, her heart melted every time. One evening in early spring, Rachel and Tom sat on the porch swing they'd installed together last month. The twins were asleep inside, the baby monitor crackling softly beside them. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "I've been thinking about Maria," Tom said quietly, about what she'd think of all this. Rachel took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "What do you think she'd think?" "I think she'd be happy," Tom said slowly. "She always wanted me to be happy, to be a good father. She'd love that the twins have you in their lives, that they're growing up on a ranch, learning to love animals and land like we both did." He paused. "I think she'd like you." "I wish I could have known her," Rachel said honestly. "She must have been amazing." "She was," Tom agreed. "And I'll always love her. That doesn't go away. But I love you too, Rachel. Differently, but just as real. Is that okay? Having room in my heart for both?" "It's more than okay," Rachel assured him. "Love isn't finite. We don't run out. And I'd never ask you to forget her or pretend she didn't exist. She gave you those two beautiful babies. She's part of your story. That makes her part of ours now too." Tom kissed her temple, pulling her closer. "How'd I get so lucky? Finding you in that storm?" "I think we both got lucky," Rachel said. "I was giving up on everything before you showed up. This ranch, my life, the possibility of being happy again. You reminded me that it's okay to start over, that broken things can be fixed if you're willing to do the work." They rocked gently on the swing, watching the last light fade from the sky. Inside, Luke made a small sound in his sleep, and through the monitor they heard Lily shift in her crib. Their children, not by blood, but by choice and love and the life they were building together. "I have something to tell you," Rachel said, a smile playing at her lips. "I talked to a lawyer last week about the ranch." Tom turned to look at her, curious. "Oh, I'm putting your name on the deed, making it officially ours, not just mine. This is your home now, Tom. Yours and the twins. I want it to be legal, not just a feeling." Tom's eyes grew wet. "Rachel, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. We're getting married. We're building a life. This ranch needs both of us. It deserves both of us." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, you've put so much work into this place. It's as much yours now as it is mine." Tom pulled her into a tight hug. "I love you so much. I love you too." They sat there as the stars came out, making plans for the future. They'd expand the horse breeding program, maybe get some cattle in a year or two, fix up the old cottage on the back of the property where Ranch Hands used to live. It could be a guest house for Tom's sister or Rachel's brother when they visited. The twins would learn to ride as soon as they could walk properly. They'd have chores, responsibilities, the kind of childhood both Rachel and Tom had loved. They'd know the value of hard work and the satisfaction of taking care of land and animals. And maybe, if they were very lucky, Luke and Lily might get a younger sibling or two eventually. Not by birth. Rachel had made her peace with that impossibility, but through adoption. They'd talked about it tentatively, the idea of giving a home to other children who needed one. Not right away, but someday, when they were ready. You know what? Tom said, looking around at the ranch, the house, the life they'd built. I used to think the storm that night was the worst thing that could have happened. My truck breaking down, getting lost in a blizzard with 2 babies. I was terrified. And now? Rachel asked. Now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. If my truck hadn't died, if I hadn't seen your lights, if you hadn't opened your door to a desperate stranger. He shook his head. I don't want to imagine where I'd be. Rachel thought about that too. If Tom hadn't knocked on her door that night, she'd probably still be alone. Still struggling, still believing she had nothing to offer. The accident had taken so much from her, but it had also put her in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to find Tom.